Hello, everyone, and welcome to OncoDaily. I'm Amalya Sargsyan, a medical oncologist and the Vice President for Research and Intelligence here at OncoDaily. And today, on our news section of the Global News and Healthcare and Policy, we are having an honor of welcoming Kathleen Jaeger, who is a U.S. spokeswoman for the Indian Pharmaceutical Alliance. And we have this very honor of discussing face-to-face what our global community needs and how we can collaborate. Thank you so much for accepting our invite and being with us today.
Oh, thank you so much. This is a great honor to be here with you and a very important topic.
So because our audience are scientists, doctors, and patients, and also advocates and policymakers, maybe we can start with briefly discussing what's your role, what you do, and how you work with U.S.-India cooperation on these generic drugs.
Absolutely. So I've been actually in the industry for over 35 years, and I used to run the Generic Pharmaceutical Association, and now I'm representing the Indian Pharmaceutical Alliance. And it's the top companies. It's 23 of the most elite companies that are doing work internationally. So they're international companies with lighthouse manufacturing facilities who are doing state-of-the-art innovation. They have both brand and generic, and they're really driving towards not only access and affordability, but also on innovation. And I am helping them on strategy and consulting on and really working to push on solutions, because we really, as we're getting this conversation, we really need some solid solutions to move access to oncology drugs forward.
Indeed, this is very important. We are very happy to cover this topic because it's important not only in US, but also in other countries, and this is a global issue. So to begin with, a broader picture of, maybe we can start with sharing what are generic drugs, where usually people get it, and how important are these drugs, not only our everyday care, but especially for oncology and other diseases, and where do we usually get them?
Sure. So generic drugs are, we have the balance between innovation and access in America, as you know. And so on the innovation side, we provide patent extensions and exclusivity to the brand side. And that's right. And it's rightfully so, because we want to basically drive innovation. On the generic side, once that actually patent protection expires and exclusivity expires, we actually then have generics come in. And I think most people are really surprised to learn that a lot of the companies actually do both brand and generic. A long time ago, it used to be one or the other, but now they actually are in both sectors, which makes sense because, you're driving innovation, but at the same time, you're driving access and affordability. But on the generic side, that allows to bring the product in at affordable prices. So usually about 80% less than the brand product, which is extensive. And that allows for more access and allows for health benefits to be extended across healthcare systems, whether they be the US or Europe or anywhere in the world for that matter. And so when you're looking at generics in the United States, you have to realize that, 9 out of 10 products are actually generics in the United States. And India actually basically provides about 50, almost to 60% of those medicines. And so when you're looking at the top therapeutic categories, probably the top 10, you're looking at anywhere from percentages, 60, 65%, and driving that forward. This savings is amazing. $1.3 trillion in savings in the last decade. So I think from that standpoint, that's amazing for our American families. It's for veterans, again, for healthcare systems to expand their benefit packages, for the employers to expand their benefit packages, and even for cancer patients, to stay extremely healthy and safe. And when you have affordability, as most of your patients know, cost actually, is quite an issue for many of them. So that's how the generics come into play. And then with India, they've been doing some really great work after COVID. And it really started during COVID, where they looked at, what was their dependency on other nations. And they realized that they were highly dependent on China. And they're not alone, actually. That's Europe, America, actually the world is actually dependent on China for upstream components. So when we're talking components, we're talking about the main active pharmaceutical ingredients and what we call key starting materials, KSMs. Those inputs are so critical to make the medicine. And unfortunately, China has a lock on the key starting materials. So India realized the dependency and has put together what they call a production linkage program. And really, they did a full analysis, and it's their first wave of actually trying to drive interdependence, I should say, away from China. And then they're trying to look at opportunities to look at those components. And of the 40 plus KSMs and APIs that are there, they have a number for core inputs for leukemia, for melanoma, for lymphoma, and all critical care for oncology. So this is an area where, patients and families and doctors and actually, policymakers need to spend more time on, because the solution for de-risking for China, ensuring about shortages, lies in this particular area on the inputs that are upstream. So as we go forward, I think we all need to be working together to ensure that we have access. I hate to say this for your patients, but this is like critical minerals in the healthcare space. And so far, we've got a lot of good policymakers understanding that medicine security is actually national security. So from that standpoint, we're starting to move and have conversations about solutions and how do we actually in the United States figure out how we can be de-risked from China. Europe is already having those conversations, and they're trying to figure out how to de-risk from China as well. And so all of us need to work together through a collaboration and consortium to drive, the resiliency of the oncology space.
Well, indeed, we need extra source of this as well, because there is always need to be a backup variant, and maybe sometimes even better one. And during COVID, a lot understood how much they could be capable of and how much they could offer the world, and we just have to figure out how to make the best of these collaborations. And the drugs and the cost of the drugs, the brand drugs, is really huge, even for countries and for rich countries. And for example, in oncology, in cancer care, there were studies that how many families are going bankrupt just because of this high cost of the drugs. And when the drug become available, the patent expires, and you can have the same quality drug for way cheaper and accessible. It's really giving the benefit. And with the newer drugs coming on the market, we really need to find the solutions, how to make the best out of it. And indeed, finding the source is very important. And you've mentioned about India and moving from China. So I think a lot people hear about it, and sometimes they even see in the Google, and they can search for the drug and see the Indian company pop up. But on the healthcare national level, how do you know how to ensure the quality of the drugs? How to know and be sure of it? I think this is another issue where sometimes people are a bit afraid when this comes from rather generic. I think you need some quality control. How do you see this going on?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. So, and quality is so essential, right? It's paramount, right, to the care of the oncology patient and every patient and every American family and families across the globe. So, you need to ensure that that there actually are quality metrics in the system, and that, and really great oversight to bring about, who is the companies that are high on quality and those that are actually falling down. A lot of stories right now are about the small companies that don't really have market share. And there's a lot of splashover and shadows to the bigger industry. The end of the day, what we need to do is ensure that we have the right oversight, we have the right mechanisms. The companies, in IPA has 2 companies that are lighthouse manufacturing facility, which mean they are the best in the globe. So we need to make sure that those companies, IPA, are striving to be more lighthouse driven, which means they're better than the brands in a lot of situations, and really driving on innovation. So they're using AI, they're using advanced manufacturing, they're using all automation. They're doing everything they can, and they're trying to basically deploy that. And they're doing a fantastic job. Clearly, more can be done as AI and other innovations come online, and they're moving in that direction. But I have to say, today they already are using a lot of these tools, even though they're brand new. And again, because quality is paramount. They also support absolutely the IPA companies. And again, they're the 23 top companies that are doing business around the globe. They support quality maturity metrics by FDA. which is fabulous. They support unannounced inspections. They support country of origin. They support, they really are wanting to be a partner and basically want to be at the table and basically be leaders in the industry and showcase how we can actually move the industry forward. And that's forward meaning like all of the global generic industry, really trying to take it up. And so the good news is you have fabulous companies that are doing this work. There's always going to be that story of the small companies out there. They don't necessarily represent, the biggest companies. And so we have to keep that in mind. And there's always going to be, unfortunately, whether you're brand or generic, there's always going to be situations where there are going to be problems. And when that happens, enforcement action is absolutely and unequivocally necessary. So from that standpoint, I think the trajectory is absolutely clear. We've got a lot of great transparency in these top companies. We've got accolades of the best from the globe on the lighthouse pieces. They're using more digital oversight, and they are for higher standards. So that is the good news. I think on the solution, when you're looking at how to drive, de-risking from China and trying to drive better opportunities, the president has an opportunity to work with the agencies and to work with Congress and really build a more resilient oncology, supply system. And that really needs to be where the focus is. And from that standpoint, there's an opportunity to deploy what we call the Title III of the Defense Production Act. That is used from shipbuildings to nuclear energy to helicopters, you name it, on the defense side. And so we're looking to leverage that so that we can bring back API facilities into the United States and how we can co-develop and co-invest with India and with Europe about really looking at how do we target those critical, essential inputs for oncology drugs upstream, and how can we work together? Because it's essential that we work together, because no one country can do all of those critical inputs, in a very short period of time.
Well, absolutely right. I absolutely agree with all the points you mentioned. And yes, the small companies sometimes change the view on certain things, but we need to make sure whom work with and who are these people who are going to drive the force. And we need this not only in one person level, but on the national level, because it can change a lot in huge healthcare system overall. So, what are the challenges of working with Indian companies? I see that you are doing a lot. We're trying to make this collaboration happen. What do you usually see in your way to make it happen? And despite those advantages, who we see?
That's a great question. So IPA has been working with the U.S. government and also with the Indian government, and under the U.S.-India partnership in the framework for that trade partnership that we have, there's a piece called Trust. It's really designed for AI, for nuclear energy, for very high-tech pieces. And we were able to expand that to pharmaceuticals. And so specifically generic pharmaceuticals and the inputs upstream. So the good news is we have that actually in the framework for U.S.-India partnership under Trust, the Trust Initiative. And now what we're saying is we'd like to see a very specific U.S.-India affordable medicine partnership that actually would build off of the Indian Production Linkage Program, but then build off and bring in even Europe and look at what are the essential inputs that we need that are actually at 100% or 90% on China, and how can we, especially for oncology drugs and for other critical meds that everyone uses, how can we bring those into development and into manufacturing facilities into the world? So that is what we've been working on. We're getting a lot of good traction. Everyone realizes that, pharmaceutical inputs, especially affordable medicine inputs, are going to be the next big issue after critical minerals. So the education was key, and we've got that education. Now we're on solutions, and now we're trying to drive those solutions forward.
Well, definitely looking forward to see what's going to be next and how to proceed next with these collaborations and see the results of this. So we have spoken a bit about the quality, about the need for access, a lot of people. Also, do you think drug shortages is another topic it might cover? Because a few, I think, months ago, even drugs which were generally available, and these were all chemotherapy drugs available to everyone, were short. In US, there were a lot of new drugs, but the old ones, no one wanted to sell them or something. Do you think this might help also in this part? And how do you see this overgoing?
Yes, no, you make a very, very good point. I think it's important though to understand how to prevent drug shortages, and really you have to look at the root cause. And instead of looking at the symptoms, we need to take a couple steps back and look at what's the root causes. And the root causes are really the biggest drivers in the U.S. oncology market, and actually for all drug shortages in the United States, are economic. And that doesn't make a lot of sense to a lot of folks. But the reason it's economic is that generic medicines are a commodity market first. And then two, you have tremendous reimbursement pressures being pushed down by what we call group purchasing organizations. They're the middlemen. And there's three major entities, and they have, unfortunately, a monopoly on the market. And they basically push those prices way down. And so that they're not paying full price for the generic medicine. And then on top of it, they're turning around and imposing baseless fees on that manufacturer. So at the end of the day, it's not a healthy environment, and it's causing one company to stay in the market. And even when they're pushing these prices down, they basically can wipe out that one single entity. That's not a way to have a very sustainable system and a robust system. So, we need to have very much in the United States predictable pricing, fair pricing, and we need to ensure that generics have a first priority piece. Use them for the taxpayers. Basically, we pull those three together, we're going to end up having multiple entries from manufacturers, which is good for the resiliency of our system and for the oncology patients. Those cancer patients shouldn't need to worry about whether or not they can get their drug going to their local pharmacy. And that's just not where we want them to be. But we have to overhaul the system. And then I think sometimes, you've got shortages being out there and they are tied to the quality issue, but it's really the economic issue that drives everything. And so if we can solve that issue, that root cause, then we can actually have a major piece. So that's why we're here back in the United States. We're driving towards reform of that system. You hear the administration talk about middlemen, the PBMs, and that's the generic first, because they are favoring brand industries. They're taking the brand rebates. The brands pay basically to maintain their monopolies, and then and push off the generics. And then two, which is not good for innovation on the generic side. And then two, you have these group purchasing, which is a gatekeeper, and they decide the fate of everyone. They decide the fate of the manufacturer. They decide the fate of the patient and the family, and who gets what product. That has to change. So we're working on solutions for that. And then two, as we kind of build into the U.S.-India partnership, these solutions are being wrapped into the conversation. So again, that we can actually really ensure that we have sustainability. We need sustainability of the U.S. healthcare system and specifically generic sector. And then we need to ensure the security of the supply system. So those are the two big pieces that we're working on right now.
Well, that's, I think, big pieces sort of with working. And where we see sometimes as oncologists, we see only one side of the thing, which is we speaking with the patient and discussing on what we can do and what drug to give. But for me, it doesn't matter actually. If the drug is the same quality and has same active drug, I'm willing to give this to the patient as long as this is approved by the guidelines and the FDA. Is another thing that you work on. So if we have in the guideline that it is okay to use the biosimilar or the generic or the patent is expired, do it. But sometimes the marketing is so, I think, bad that people think that if it's not the brand, it doesn't help you. It really can't work. So it's coming from the down to the up, from the ministers and governments to the healthcare policymakers, to the doctors, to the patients. Everyone needs to be educated as well. As you have also mentioned, this is also a very important topic. And especially nowadays, I think there's only a few years left since first immunotherapy patent to expire. I believe a lot of generic companies will be looking forward to developing it, and a lot of pharma companies will not want this to happen.
Exactly.
But the healthcare system cannot just tolerate this amount of the drugs. So if you can help not one person but 100, definitely it's worth exploring the ways to do it. So now from the backside, I see that it's not only day job with working with the patient, but you have to work with governments and ministries and these facilities to make sure that everyone gets this access and affordability.
No, I was going to say I agree completely that, at the end of the day, we have a fabulous FDA, and also Europe too, right? Everybody between Europe and the United States, they have fabulous systems to ensure that the generic drugs are the same as the brand, and that's amazing, right? So we have a great gold standards, here in the United States. So we know that the generic is going to provide the same safety and efficacy of that of the brand. Unfortunately, we can't in the United States prevent fear campaigns, but that's what the brand industry does. That's how they keep their market share, and they've been doing this for the last 30 years since I've been in the industry. And the fear campaigns, and when you sow fear into physicians and patients, then they don't want to take the generic; they'll take the brand. But when they realize it's really not, a lot of it's just a campaign, a lot of it's smoke and mirrors. There's nothing behind it, and there's a lot of history of these brand companies doing this over the years. And you realize, just listen to the regulators, listen to scientists who actually look at the products and test the products. Look at listen to those that have all the information and the applications, and realize that when they're saying that they're the same, they are the same. When they're not the same, they don't approve them, and so which is a great thing. So I think you have to realize that's going to happen no matter what, as much as we'll push back on them. And we just have to realize that's part of this sector that we live in. But I think at the end of the day, we're lucky that we have the FDA. We're lucky that we have access to affordable medicine. And to your point, if you can help thousands of people, instead of one, and you said 100, but I'll go thousands, because over the years we've done some really good reforms. We've really been able to drive generics in the United States, and utilization was right around like 38% in 2000, and today we're at basically 90% generic utilization in the United States, and that says a lot. 90% of the medicine in the United States is generic. Everyone's taking them. Everyone's healthy. Is safe. That is fabulous. And that actually allows for the limited healthcare dollars that we have to extend over and provide for other healthcare benefits for those oncology patients that need more testing or need, some additional pieces. It allows, that's really the opportunity to extend our limited dollars. And so regardless if you're, if the taxpayer, the family, especially for the oncology patient, affordability is so key.
Yes, indeed. And this is what we always speak with our patients, that it's a problem not only in the small countries or big countries, rich or poor, it's everywhere, because the burden is so huge. So this is an opportunity and window. But you have to have the trust. And as you have mentioned, when you know that FDA is going to check whether the quality is the same, you have the trust and you can do this. And it's a bit fair towards others too, because instead of one person, 1,000 people will get the benefit. I do agree with you. You usually, as a policymaker, look a bit broader. We look at a few people on our perspectives, but this is important. And there have been, I think, from US, we've heard that debates on the import tariffs and so on, how the drug will change and so on. Do you think this will also affect the generic drugs that will be imported from elsewhere? Or do you think this will somehow be settled? What is your view on these issues?
So there was a lot of conversation, right, and as you mentioned, around tariffs on generics. But I think the administration and a lot of great policymakers in Washington realize that it will actually cause shortages. And the shortages is not in the best, having a shortage for an oncology patient or a heart, disease patient, cardiac patient is not in anybody's best interest. Really, what we need to do is maintain health, right? And their health and well-being. And so we're hopeful that they're going to continue in this path. There were still conversations. The really, instead of having tariffs, which really are just, taxes, instead of, doing a punitive effect, let's do the incentives. Let's work with the companies to reshore these critical essential medicines that we need. And let's work together as incentives and bring those back. And so I think that that's been working well so far. We have companies who are in conversations with the government. They're willing and they're ready to help the United States. And so I'm willing to expand their footprint here in the United States, because they already have many manufacturing facilities here in the United States already. So just expanding their footprint, and very willing to do that. So we're hoping that at the end, President Trump realizes that generics do lower prescription drug costs, and again, provides for affordability and access. And so we really need to, hopefully they continue on this path they're on, where the solutions are about ensuring access, maintaining access, while we drive resiliency at the same time.
Congrats on the immense job that you are doing on the field. And I see that how much is changing and how much people put effort into these global initiatives. It's indeed global, not only US, but it's a huge collaboration. So discussing what we have now or understood, what do you think will be the next key point in this development, in this collaboration between India and US? What do you see the next steps?
I think the next step is right now we're waiting for the trade agreement to come down. They've negotiated that trade agreement, and it's pending review and approval. If it needs another round, it will go through another round. Once we get that actually concluded, then we can actually start working on the implementation of the more specific initiatives like trust, in which underneath would be the U.S.-India partnership for affordable medicine. So at the same time, we're still pushing pretty hard on the resiliency side back here in the United States, on API manufacturing and finished dosage form manufacturing. But the partnership really goes to the KSMs, those critical inputs upstream for the oncology patients. So that's why we're driving in that direction, and we're hoping that the administration has sees that light and has the opportunity to create that solution and that diversification for the supply system.
Thank you. And looking ahead, what gives you the most optimism about building this more resilient, more equitable drug supply chain? What drives you?
It was education, and I'd say we've spent the last 3 or 4 years educating about the risks of China, and the necessary actions to de-risk from China. And I have to say that I am just so pleased that we are sitting here today, and that we have administration officials at very high places understanding that this is the next big issue. And we're not going to wait for the next pandemic. We're going to actually start to solve the issue, and their conversations are ongoing about trying to solve this. So that's what makes me extremely pleased, and to know that we're actually making a positive difference, and we can see the trajectory, and they understand the seriousness of this issue. So health, right? We need health security, which is medicine security, which is national security, and they finally have gotten it.
Well, a fantastic answer. I think couldn't have made better. And indeed, everything starts from it and ends with it. So we're very happy to see this happen. Pandemic taught us a lot. It was tough times, but we have learned a lot in every field, how to manage, how to organize it better, and be prepared. Because in this world, we have to be prepared for a lot of things, and finding alternative ways, which are sometimes better than what we had, is very important. We just have to look broad and put our efforts in the right way, as I see that you are doing, and the whole team, I believe, is working and doing it in all the highest levels. It was very great and interesting to have you today with us, to get this broader view, to see how the world is moving and what to see next. Hopefully by the next time we meet, we're going to have it even more formalized, the collaborations, and you speaking about the results. of what it gave and how it changed the overall healthcare solution. And maybe it can be an example of a lot of countries, because I believe that a lot of countries are exploring the ways to overcome all of these health economic issues and build more sustainable systems. Because what we have now sometimes is not what is the best, and we need to understand how to utilize and use the most of it. Thank you for joining us today. And if you have anything to conclude, we'll be happy to hear you.
Oh, no, I just want to say thank you very much for the opportunity to be here and speak with your audience. And you do fabulous work. And the area of oncology care is so, so essential and so important to so many American families. As 1 in 10 Americans, unfortunately, are diagnosed with cancer throughout their lifetime. So this is hitting every family. And we need to make sure that we have the right solutions for those families.
Indeed, we have to build something to give access to everyone, because especially for cancer patients, for economy reasons, not getting the treatment is just unfair. And this could be one of the solutions, because it has already proven the benefit and the way it used it. Thank you once again so much for joining us. And thank you, our audience, for listening. And hopefully it was very educational for you as well. And now we know how the generic and brands work, and that it's not just coming to the market, but a lot of people work on it. A lot of people put effort on it, and to make sure that there are the best available options for you and all of the healthcare. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to OncoDaily on YouTube. Hit the bell icon to stay updated.